Okay, so part that you guys are probably wondering about too is the third part, which is networking. How do you actually get yourself into the door with instead of emailing hundreds of people? So the first thing I always get asked is, do you have to know someone in the firm in order to get in? So the short answer is, it is better to know someone, but it is not that you have to know someone to get in. So in fact, for example, the two of the people who we got offers from this week, they didn't know anyone when they applied. They just had a really good application and it just applied and got interviews. And you'll also notice a couple stories later on today as well of people who literally just applied out of thin air just because they didn't think they had, but they're like, well, let's see what happens. And they got picked for it. But so networking is completely optional. That's why I don't emphasize it first, but it is important to do if you feel like you would not traditionally get into the door if you are your background. So for example, if you feel as though your background might have a red flag and you might need some support, this is where it works. So a lot of people, they think networking is this dirty word, but in fact, reality, it is actually networking when done well, is actually a very beautiful word that is about how do you create greater value by having two people come together. So what most people do and why they try to mistake and this is probably the worst practices for networking, especially for consulting firms, that for most people, they list themselves open to anywhere there is a job. So they will apply for any firm that's willing to have a job opening. And then second, they are going to apply to any city. So it doesn't matter if they're living in New York, they will apply to places that are in Detroit. They'll apply to places that are in San Diego, in Austin, and so forth. And second, they attend any and all consulting events that a firm hosts. So it doesn't matter if it's a webinar, in person, they'll host everything. Third, they send LinkedIn requests to every single consultant and recruiter they can find on LinkedIn. And finally, they send emails and code emails to everyone who will work on it. But the outcome is that they get very low results. They invest all this time and at least the frustration when they don't hear back from anyone. They don't get their LinkedIn requests go ignored, or if they get a LinkedIn request, they don't get any replies. They don't understand why they're not making traction. So this is what our clients do, and it's quite the opposite. So first off, our clients are very picky about which cities they apply to. So they know exactly, so in order to focus their time, they're able to pick one or two cities, or three in some cases, where they know that they would want to work. Second, they attend events that are targeted towards a particular audience or office location. So instead of trying to go to every event and spending that time, they only attend specific events. For example, if someone wants to work in the DC office, then they will only attend offices or events that are targeted to the DC office. Or maybe they're a woman and they are only going to target women-only events where they know that they're going to be targeted a lot more than just everyone. And third, they try to turn LinkedIn profiles into actual in-person or telephone meetings instead of just having a request. And finally, they have a system for turning these LinkedIn strangers into future referrals. So as a result, they don't spend nearly as much time. And the result is that they're able to turn down interviews because they get so many. So I'm going to share with you a story of a client of ours who had a very atypical background. So psychology major from a school that in the Midwest that doesn't recruit a lot. And but what she did was she strategically chose which city she would apply to and where she was going. So for example, her family is from New Jersey, so she was willing to work in New Jersey. So she applied for the BCG McKinsey New Jersey office, for example. So even though she was coming from a non-target school, she was able to get interviews because when she reached out to people, imagine what most people do is when they reach out to managers, partners, or associates at these firms, they're pretty much saying, hey, I saw that you work in consulting. Can we work? Can I get on the phone with you? Versus for someone like Stephanie, she did the opposite. She's like, hi, I'm from New Jersey. I'm applying. I love New Jersey. Want to work there. And imagine the two differences in the emails. One is like generic that is sent over to hundreds of people. And one's literally coming from someone who wants to work in New Jersey. So she eventually applied to places in New Jersey. She applied places in Cleveland, in St. Louis. So the places that she actually really wanted to actually legitimately live in. And of course, you can tell from her, she loves certain cities, and she goes in, and when she meets people, she's able to meet them in person, and she has so much enthusiasm for why she wants to be in Cleveland. But some of you guys are like, oh, I've never lived in Cleveland. But I was like the opposite, right? Stephanie's like willing to live in Cleveland. So as a result, the enthusiasm shows, and a lot of the people she met would eventually just make a referral for her to the firm without her asking. So she had an insider that she didn't know before, but purely based on the fact that she was just enthusiastic about the city versus trying to apply to every single city that could possibly, like LA, San Francisco, whatever. She was very targeted. And so I'll let her share her story about how she turned this strategy into eventually getting interviews and offers.
A lot of people I talked to told me that companies wouldn't talk to me because I was a psychology major, and to some degree there was a lack of recruiting presence on my campus from some of the major consulting firms. When BCG called me for my final round interview, I was like, I'm Stephanie Duenas. I'm from New Jersey, and I went to school at Washington University in St. Louis. I studied psychology and Spanish, and I developed an interest in business and specifically consulting around my junior year, and that led me to Davis. So I found Davis online through a Reddit ad, which was pretty unusual as I was browsing r/consulting. And I was really interested because Davis kind of pushed me to apply and kind of asked me to present almost a case for why I was interested in consulting. So that made it clear to me that he only wanted people that were really serious about it. And then when I spoke with him, he was really interested in getting to know me as a person. I was in Australia and he was in San Francisco. And even though the time was not convenient, for him, we were still on the phone for 45 minutes. I felt like he really wanted to get to know me. From Davis, I always had somebody to reach out to if I had specific questions. And that came from the very beginning when I was writing resumes and cover letters, all the way to the end when I was evaluating offers with John, my case coach. It was, getting very consistent feedback, and sessions that were often an hour turned into 2 hours because sometimes I really needed that long to get through a case and then to get all of the feedback, doing notes in the beginning just about lots and lots of tips and tricks. And then with Melody, my resume consultant, it turned into 4 and 5 rounds of editing on a resume, just really down to the nitty gritty and holding me accountable for what was on my resume. Even when I thought my resume was good, pushing me to make it a lot better. Honestly, the point that I almost feel that I can edit resumes now myself. So I was really happy with my results.
All right, so we'll end it there. She talks a little bit more about her results, but you get the picture there, is that she was able to, even though she was able to coming in to, give me a second. Somebody asked a question about technical. Sec. All right, awesome. Yeah, so if anyone runs into any technical difficulties, feel free to message me. But you just saw Stephanie right there, right? She talks about how she was able to work to be able to network her way into these interviews with having a really strong resume and also being very specific. She talks about New Jersey a lot, as you can see, but she was very specific about the type of people that she was willing to talk to, and this made it less frustrating for her. So again, kind of like enthusiasm. Imagine, for many of you, imagine going to the school you're at or the school you graduate from, and having someone who is very young, younger than you, a couple of years, who wants to be in your position. Imagine having someone who just particularly wants to work. So if you're at Columbia, someone who just wants to get into Columbia, versus someone who's like, oh yeah, I'm just exploring various schools. One of them you're going to invest a lot of time into. And that's what Stephanie did, was she used her enthusiasm in order to get these interviews at Bain, McKinsey, BCG, and all these other firms, was just being able to be very targeted in what she was doing. Obviously, she had a great resume. As you mentioned, she just revised 4 or 5 times with us, but just making sure that you have a good application and then having a really tailored networking strategy. So really, the thing to keep in mind is that people want to help you. Just don't ask them to marry you on the first date. So a lot of people, and unfortunately, I see this when I was at Bain, and I still see this today from a lot of messages, is that when you're asking people to help, they want to help you, but asking someone to to be a referral for you, write an internal referral, so reference for you for someone. So basically, if you want to work at a BCG in New York and you get someone from BCG New York to write you a letter, but you don't know them, and you ask them that out in the first message, it's kind of like asking them to marry you. It's like, hey person, I know you don't know me, but would you be willing to risk your reputation and everything you built at BCG New York to help me out and write me a referral so I can get an interview? And I know you don't know me. I might not do a good job at interview, but I just want you to write a referral because I'm cold emailing you on LinkedIn right now. That's basically what happens. And of course, you don't want to do that because it's like asking them to marry you before they even know you. So get to know them, have a conversation. For Stephanie, for example, she started a little bit early. So she started, I remember when she was studying abroad, she mentioned she was in Australia. And so she had an entire semester to begin in the summer to begin that process. So that's what I want you to be able to do as well, is start the process early, because there's nothing worse than networking right before you have it, you have your application due, because then it's very obvious. But as a result of this, you probably have picked this up, right? Is that you don't want to just start emailing everyone. So I want to share with you the top 3 places that our clients get referrals. And just make sure we're on the same page. A referral means someone who works at the firm who's willing to, at the actual company still. So if you're applying again, to say to Bain, DC, someone who works at Bain or in DC. So one thing to keep in mind is that it's better to have someone give you a referral for the city from the city that you're working at. So if it's Bain DC, it's Bain DC, but realize that it can be completely global. So we have clients, for example, speaking of Bain, who are now working in Bain around the world. And 2 of them, their referrals didn't come from the same city. So one of them is working in the Bain Dubai office, but her referral came from a connection in San Francisco. And one is working in San Francisco, but her referral came from Bain, New York. So just realize that it doesn't have to be from the same city. It can be from anyone there. It's more powerful in a city. And the other thing to remind is that you don't need a referral. So someone like Stephanie, who's coming from a non-target school, is a psychology major and is applying to a city like New Jersey, where people can't tell why she's doing New Jersey, will probably need a referral. But if you're someone who already has a strong background and expertise, for example, you're really strong in oil and gas, you have a PhD or master's or years of experience in oil and gas, and you're trying to apply to, say, to Bain Houston, probably less likely you need a referral. So think about if you need one before you even start the process. But I'll share with you the top 3 places where our clients get referrals. So the first place is asking friends and family. Very simple. Just ask any friends or families that you have. So this is very rare, but sometimes this really works. For example, we had 2 clients, and this is a little easier story, so I don't share these stories on these presentations, is that 2 of them had an uncle who were senior partners or directors at McKinsey. So very easy referral there. Again, not everyone has that, so I don't share those stories because there are more exceptions. So out of the 400 so people we've worked with, there was only 2. So just very, 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 very rare. For most people, they're asking for friends and friends of friends and so forth. Second is they're reaching out to members of shared groups. So when I was at Bain, I'm a part of Toastmasters, which is a public speaking group around the world. And so when Toastmasters members would reach out to me and they found out we were in Toastmasters, I'm automatically going to help them. So this applies to anyone who's at my alma mater. This applies to anyone who is in any group that I'm at. So any undergrad I went to, any student organizations and so forth, it's going to be a connection there. And third is by attending specific firm networking events. So not general events, but like very specific. For example, open houses for New York, open houses for Chicago, whichever one, or open houses for people who are in STEM, PhD programs. And you guys already know a lot about the PhD programs that are coming up, that a lot of them have already passed, but think about it for next year. There's a lot of programs that are very built specifically for certain types of people, and certain types of cities and certain firms attend those. And I'll even show you one that's happening in New York soon. But I'd like to share with you a story of one of our clients. This is Wacko, and I almost did not take her on as a client because she found out about us through a Google search and reached out and applied. Like I mentioned, everyone who works with us has to go through an application process, and there is an interview that happens after. And so she reached out and applied, and I saw that she was from Kenya. And usually I was like, and she was doing development work. So I was like, well, this is probably not a good fit because, again, you're in Kenya where the earnings are not as high as, let's say, someone in the US or Canada, London, Singapore, Hong Kong. So basically the places we usually work. But when she reached out, she said, hey, Davis, I know I'm not your typical client. I'm from Kenya, but please hear me out here. Is 2 things. Is that I really want to do what's best for my country. And she said, I really want to work in consulting so that I can learn the skill sets that will enable me to come back and work and to develop Kenya as a strong country and be a leader in our generation. So that's the first thing that she said to me. I was like, okay. And she said, second, Davis, I don't know the prices of your program, so I don't talk about prices until it's a good fit because it's not a conversation you need to have. She said, I don't know your prices. It's probably a lot, but I will literally figure out a way to get the money. I just want to be able to work with you. I've heard amazing things. And so I said, fine, let's just get on an interview. And we ended up getting an interview, and I just fell in love with her answers in terms of why she was doing it. Like I mentioned, she really wanted to help the world. And she read my story, saw the TED Talk, and she knew that I had a soft spot for people who were trying to improve the world. And so she used that as her way into getting in. And I was like, okay, well, you realize you don't have any networks. I know I don't have any network in consulting, but I believe that your system can help me get there. And so we built a system for her. She used all 3. First off, she didn't asking for for family and friends. So it turns out, yep, not many connections of families, but she did have a friend she worked with, a coworker, who had a connection to someone. So not in no families, that was an easy figuration, but she had a friend who she met during a prior company she worked at who was also doing some nonprofit development work, who knew someone who was at McKinsey, who was then a manager at engagement manager at McKinsey. And she's like, yeah, could I have an introduction? And what ended up happening was she had this chat with this person, and this person at McKinsey, after through kind of 2 introductions, said, oh yeah, you should probably talk to someone who is doing development work for McKinsey. And she said, I would love to. And so she used the second one, which was she leveraged the fact that she had this shared group of interest, which is this development work for East Africa. And so she was able to do this and get connected to someone who was doing development work, development type projects for McKinsey. And eventually this person told her, hey, you should probably look at some particular events to meet more people. And that was the advice. She thought, man, this is not going to happen, Davis. It's like, I feel like a dead road. And it turns out that McKinsey at the time, good timing, was hosting a program called the Next Generation Women's Leaders. And what that is essentially taking representatives from regions around the world who they think will be the next generation of leaders. So for her, she wasn't even competing against people in Kenya. She was literally competing against people in East Africa for this one position. And to find out about these events, so we posted it, and then she saw the Facebook post I posted and went there. But again, you don't have to be in our community to know these. Just sign up for the McKinsey email list. And she eventually attended this event, this particular firm recruiting event, which passed. And she was able to meet the McKinsey recruiter who's in charge of entire region of East Africa for this event. So her story is still going, but she's pretty much at this point going to get an interview. And to apply for the program, we just worked on her resume, her cover letter, and pretty much her story, she will tell you what didn't happen overnight, happened over a period of 6 months. But just being able to see where someone's coming from a country where you don't think you could have a chance of getting into consulting, and being able to turn this into a way for her to help achieve her long-term goal of being able to help her country of Kenya. This is super amazing in terms of the way that she was able to do it. And you saw how she was able to leverage all 3 to eventually get to the point. She had to use all 3. So she really hustled for this. So what I'm telling you is that a lot of clients who we work with start with 0 networking abilities. And you might have 0 networking, 0 connections, but it doesn't mean that you have to end there. And those are the 3 things that you can do. And at this point, Davis, you're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't have any friends and family. I don't have any groups. I don't have any events I know of. So I'm going to share with you one event that you can actually go to in a bit. So as an advanced degree, you're probably, anyone who's a PhD here as well, an advanced degree, probably thinking, well, I'm an advanced degree. I don't have any connections. Well, you're probably wrong on that. Think about your undergrad. There are probably people in your undergrad who've gone. Think about the fact that you're not just an advanced degree at Cornell. You're not just an advanced degree at Columbia, you're not an advanced degree at Stanford or whichever your school you're attending to right now, but you have the whole connection to that university. So think of anyone who's ever worked in consulting. So even if you're at, let's say, doing research at Columbia, you literally have access to Columbia University, right? So anyone who's went to the business school is likely to talk to you. You find a commonality. So there's a lot of ways to do it. Again, advanced degrees, I keep mentioning this. You guys might notice I keep talking about advanced degrees for ourselves section because I want to do this belief, because we work with a lot of people with PhDs who are doing postdocs. And I know some of you guys are not falling into this bucket, so I'm addressing a very specific audience here, is that they believe that they cannot do this. And it just fathoms me, because you can do this. I know for a fact that you can do this because you have everything that an undergrad has plus more. So just keep that in mind. And for anyone who's watching, I know a lot of you guys are from New York. Otherwise, that's how you register for this event. There's actually a case competition going on that's hosted by the Tri-I Consortium here. And it's just by Rockefeller University. And you literally, if you ever think it was like, hey, I just want to network with some firms, you literally have access here to all these consulting firms, right? Clearview is there, IQVIA is there, Navigant's there, then Johnson & Johnson's there. It's just, anytime you're going to get a chance to go to a case competition is a great way to meet people in terms of the event. So I want you to make sure that you have a chance to know that there are plenty of events out there, networking events. It doesn't have to be a case competition for you to meet these events. But you guys might be thinking, oh man, how do I find these? Again, email list, stay updated. There's a bunch of consulting clubs in the area as well. Easy to find these opportunities. As in, finding opportunities should not, so I don't want to hear any excuses for anyone in here who thinks that they cannot build a network. So we just literally just share Wacko's story, and you saw what she had to go through. Yeah, you guys have it so easy. If I told her about the fact that so many of you are from a major city like New York, and then all of a sudden she's like, what? They can just go to a case competition event and just meet all these people? I have to go through all these loops? Think about what she would think. So plenty of networking opportunities for you to come out through. But again, information is not enough. You need to act on it. So when it comes to your networking, focus on quality of relationships, not quantity. Realize that you only need one good connection at each firm to open the doors for you. And finally, focus on family and friends, group memberships, and attending specific firm events. You'll hear a couple more people who leverage the specific firm events as well in order to get their interviews later on to today. All right, so that's the third secret to getting your foot in the door. So after having a great resume, a great cover letter, if only you need networking because you feel like there's something that you think would not get you accepted. Again, networking, having referrals is always better than not having a referral from an internal source to networking. But again, some people don't need it because a lot of our clients, for example, didn't have a referral. I didn't have a referral when I was doing it. I just had a great resume and a great cover letter.